Welcome to the Faithful and True podcast. As promised, we have returned with our special guests, Russ and Susie Smidt from the team here at Faithful and True, together with Dr. Greg Miller, our host. I'm Randy Everett, your co-host. And if you viewed or listened to our last podcast, we started to hear how Russ and Susie have the transformation that took place in their lives, going from finding Faithful and True as clients, going through the process of their healing journey, and having themselves evolve professionally into counselors and life coaches here at Faithful and True. Susie and Russ, welcome back. Good to see you again.
Thank you.
Well, we left off last time, and I want to revisit it, this idea of not wanting to do our personal work through some sort of academic situation.
Yeah.
And so, Susie, what was it like for you to start hearing principles and concepts academically that maybe you had heard in Mark and Deb say or allude to? Was there a tension there to continue to engage your journey as well as being introduced to principles of recovery through some sort of academic experience?
Yeah, Greg. By the time I was in school there, I knew that I was in the mindset that recovery was going to be now forever for me. I was going to be continuing to grow and learn things and not stop, not say, okay, I've somehow arrived somewhere. I like the humility that's in that, even as I work with these women that, I'm not someplace higher up than them. It's just a continued growth process. And so school was like that too. Some of what I sat through in school, actually, I pretty much knew I wasn't going to face a lot if I worked in this field. I hoped to work in this field. Some of the things were just really, really inspiring and exciting in my classes because they were going to directly relate to the work I was going to do here.
Mm-hmm. Did you kind of have any awareness within your own story from something that happened academically? Like, did you see yourself or your journey and going, oh boy, that explains a lot?
Interesting question. I'm not sure.
Okay.
I'm not sure I had that experience.
Well, one of the things, and we kind of said this last time, is that the information cannot be a substitute for our personal journey of recovery.
Right.
And it can absolutely inform our journey, to be given new language, to be given a new understanding, to be introduced to a concept may actually help me in my recovery, and I still have to choose to internalize it and use it experientially.
Yeah, I actually just thought of it. There was a whole process, it's an entire class actually that was at my graduate school, and it was about early life recollections or whatever. And don't we talk about that a lot here? That class really was, we paired off with a fellow student and both, told in detail these stories of our early lives and things that we came to learn from those experiences, like the survivor chair, right?
Right.
How the childhood experiences create good things and also false beliefs, and so that was very much like what we do here.
Well, I know in seminary, I was introduced through a class, it was called the Theology of Pastoral Care, and I was introduced to narrative theology. And in that class, we had to create groups, tell stories, and it was really the first time I began to understand that the experiences of the past do inform our experiences in the present. And it was amazing how just that awareness of, the past does matter would come back later in a significant way when I actually began my own journey of recovery. So it was kind of like an introduction that validated what I would experience later on.
That makes sense.
Well, Russ, what was it like for you watching Susie make a transition into something that she had passion about and was good at as you were continuing to serve in your profession?
Well, I think, first of all, I was super proud. I was very proud of how she did. She was one of the more mature students, and I think, and had a lot more life experience and also experience in recovery. And so I think there were a lot of her cohorts that really looked to her for support, and some.
I did feel like the mom in some of my classes.
Yeah. And I don't know, I enjoyed working with her. I enjoyed the academic part of it secondhand. And I don't know, I felt like it was actually a point at which we were growing together. It wasn't like we had two separate learning processes. This was kind of part of what we were doing together. And even though she was going to get licensed, I was still doing groups with Mark, and that was informing me. It was helping me as well. It also helped me in my other job. I thought to have that psychological information, which we don't get in medical schools.
Right.
Russ, was your relationship with Mark one of the motivating factors in wanting you to get more involved in our line of work?
I would say almost,
entirely, almost.
Yeah.
Very much so. Yeah. No, it was an interesting process. I was in group every week with Mark in some capacity for 8 years before I finally talked to him and said, I think I'm ready finally to move out of group. And literally when I said that after group, he pulled me into his office and said, "I've been waiting for this. I'd like you to co-lead the group with me." And I said, "Wow, I appreciate that, and I'm not sure I'm quite ready for that. Can I try, doing, I know some guys I want to get together with, try and do it on my own." And that lasted a month. And I thought, this is crazy. I have an opportunity to work with Mark. Why would I pass that up? And so then for another 8 years, every Tuesday night, we would co-lead the group. And he'd always call it co-leading. I never thought of it that way, but he insisted to call it that. And then frequently after group, we would sit in his office for a while and talk, and those were really meaningful times. And he had a lot of encouragement for me and Susie to kind of go into this work together. We had many discussions about that.
So for a season, it seems like a long season, you were kind of living in two worlds. You had your day job that was demanding and took a lot of energy and effort, and then you had this other opportunity here at Faithful and True. Did it feel like those two things worked together, or were there times that it felt like they were almost oppositional to each other?
No, I would say almost exclusively, other than the time element, which I didn't mind at all. It's a fair drive over here from where we live, but I didn't mind that. I love coming here, and actually I would say that, did we talk about what my other job was?
Not yet.
Oh, okay.
And you can mention it. No, we're ready.
We've been very
We've
protective.
been building the anticipation.
We didn't know.
I'm a physician by training. I'm a pediatrician, and so I got into medicine for I think 3 reasons, none of which I would advocate. One is, I'll say I was strongly encouraged by my parents to go to medical school, and I'll say it that way. And then I like the scientific aspect of it, the problem-solving aspect of it, and I was pretty competitive, and at that time that was kind of where that was the kind of highest attainment, at least in my growing up, and so that was not a good reason to go to medical school, as it turns out. What I learned, and what we know, is that since sexual addiction is known as an intimacy disorder, it's also known as an empathy desert. I just made that up.
It fits.
Can we quote you on that?
Yeah, you can try.
It's your new book.
Okay. So, one of the things that really happened in a good way is that I got much better in my physician role in recovery. I became much more empathetic, much more open. I had never in my life been somebody like Susie, where people would come to me with problems, and all of a sudden people were stopping by my office and saying, "Hey, can I talk to you?" And they didn't know about my recovery, that I just had become a person that looked safe and talked in a safe way. And that was a major deal for me. That was a big awakening for me, and it really helped me.
Well, another thing that happened, if I can add,
Yes, you may.
that without any marketing or any intention, really, all of a sudden, he started attracting kids to his practice who were struggling with depression, anxiety, ADD. The second half of his practice really became, I don't know what percentage, but a huge percentage mental health. And that was just not something that you tried to do, right?
No, that was a word of mouth thing.
Well, and what may also be true, though, is as you were growing in your own recovery and becoming aware of the mental health issues, you became more attentive to that in the patients that were coming and began to kind of explore that in their health. And then that began the word of mouth of this is a place to come where they pay attention to this or at least acknowledge this part of total health.
Sure. Yeah, it was an interesting thing because I would see the origins of all those mental health issues in children, and then I'd go to group and I would see the result of all those difficulties in the adult issues that we deal with in addiction. So many co-occurring things like most addicts have some form of ADD, very frequently depression or anxiety, some obsessive things. We've had some autistic guys that weren't undiagnosed. We've had some guys with bipolar, and so mental health issues in addition to addiction are something we address pretty commonly, not as a physician but as support.
So you mentioned that these two realities, the being the physician, being here at Faithful and True, worked for the most part in harmony, and there was the time issue. And so how was it navigating your time commitments in those early days when you were trying to be in both of these worlds?
That's a hard question to answer. Do you have any insight?
Well, I do.
I would love to.
I can speak to that.
Yeah, I'd love you to see.
He got over here most of the time on time for Tuesday night group, Mark would say. Russ is sometimes late, he would say. After a work day, but then there was that season when I was an intern where he spent his day off here working with me with couples, and that was intense. That was like 5 really long days of work each week that did wear.
Yeah, that's true.
I think.
Did that answer your question?
It did.
Oh, great.
So at some point, did you begin to think, I would like to be at Faithful and True more and be a physician less?
Yeah, that was a titanic struggle. Mark and I had many discussions about me going back to school to become a psychiatrist. At one point, he really wanted to get his own SPECT scan so he could do brain scans. And I had to inform him that in order to do that, I'd have to go into poverty for about 4 years, and I wasn't able to do that. And that really was restricting. We had kind of had financial obligations that would be hard to meet for me to go back to be a student again. That was hard. I mean, that was really hard. And then, go back to counseling, go back to, be a CSAT, or go back to do all these other things. And so I had I really struggled with that because I think the other part of it was Susie definitely felt a calling, and initially I did not. I felt like my calling was to do exactly what I was doing, and I didn't view it as who I was, now.
You looked into a graduate degree, a master's degree in counseling, and even took a couple classes at Adler.
Yeah.
And it's been quite a process of wrestling with what's the right way to do this.
Well, and you mentioned something that I think is valid and many people struggle with is when you want to make a change somewhere in your older years, at that point you have created a lifestyle, you do have financial commitments, you do have this income that you have been counting on, and the assumption all along is we could continue to count on that. And so the idea for those of people who are considering a change of stepping away from that and going back to school or doing something else is a huge risk. And so figuring out how we navigate that can be incredibly complex. It is absolutely a part of the equation. It's kind of that question of what is possible given our current circumstances.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's been, all these factors came together, I guess, for me to want to do this and to retire from being a physician here at the end of the month and come on here full time or with Susie. I think part of that was COVID influenced. That was such a stressful time as a physician, and the amount of mental health needs kind of skyrocketing. And I don't know, I can't pinpoint a specific time, but sometime in that COVID period, it became pretty clear to me that I needed to stop doing that and start doing this. And that really felt like something I really wanted to engage in.
Well, one of the things that I absolutely believe is that God is a steward of all of our resources. So all of our experiences, all of the things that we are aware of, we know, we've been exposed to, when we bring them to God, that God maximizes those. And so what is interesting about this transition for you is all that experience that you had working with children as a physician is easily and beautifully going to play into your work going forward, because the principle is you're working with adults now, but at one point we were all children. And so your understanding of that childhood experience through the lens of a physician is really going to be incredibly helpful for you going forward, I think.
Yeah, I think one of the things you learn is that it's really easy to write a prescription. It's really hard to talk to people. And you know, I think there are certainly times where medication is necessary and helpful, and there are a lot of times where you need to have something else too, and that's the part I think that most people really struggle with getting, and that's kind of help with their kind of who they are, you know, their personhood. And that's really changed how I've looked at my job, to be able to look at people as people and not as problems to solve. And I think, you know, I do think I bring a lot of different kind of things to the table. I learned a lot just observing Mark for 16 years and working with him and picking his brain and, you know, learning through that experience. And I don't know why Susie got called before I did. You know, I just don't. Used to not like that very much, that I was working here and I didn't feel it was a calling, but I felt more like it was something I enjoyed. I felt like I was being helpful.
Well, what if it was at that point an opportunity?
Yeah.
And it was a great opportunity, and so you stewarded the opportunity that you were given. It made sense.
Yeah, well, I think that's what Susie says, you know, to have a master plan is maybe not so good. I remember and I hear this a lot from guys too, when you first start this recovery process, the first thing I want to do is write a book.
Right.
And I remember talking to, I must have talked to 10 or 12 people about that, some big pastors in town here and things like that. And, you know, this idea that, oh, you know, I've discovered this, I want everybody to know it too. And I wasn't ready to do that. That was crazy. But so, you know, it just wasn't a time. And I think if we have patience and we continue to listen and not push away suggestions, I think ultimately we can feel good about making decisions. It's not without some trepidation. I go into
What we're
this.
doing.
Yeah. Well, and, you know, part of it is identity. I didn't think it would bother me to not be a physician, but I've had to humbly say it has made a difference to say I'm, you know, a coach. You know, that's who I am as a worker now, and realize that's, you know, we're not what we do. We're who we are, and I like the idea of bringing the totality of my experiences and self and personality and all of those experiences to try and help people that are struggling with the same thing that I did and do.
So we've alluded to it, but let's just say it clearly. So the plan is you are retiring from being a physician at the end of 2021 and coming full-time here at Faithful and True starting in January of 2022.
That is correct.
So that's big.
It's exciting.
It is big.
Yeah, it's really, really exciting for me. I'm super
It is
excited
big.
about it. Yeah.
I think about being out for a walk in the neighborhoods during COVID, during the whole really intense shutdown. And on one of those walks, that was the conversation of that this has become a calling for us. And that's the memory I have anyway. And now it's just been these months of trying to figure out how to make it happen.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that idea, for many of us, the title that we have or what we do, the status that we get from our profession, sometimes is more subtle than we're aware of. But then when we go through these transitions and something is exposed, we begin to recognize how much of our value and identity was attached to this title that we have. And so living in the truth, whatever the truth is part of what brings freedom. I am not my title, whatever it is, and my value, my identity don't come from what I do. And this is a way that I can be a part of this redemptive process for couples and for men.
It was embarrassing to me to come to that realization that it did mean something. Mm-hmm. I mean, I really never thought it did. It wasn't that big a deal. I didn't insist on people calling me doctor ever, and neither did my dad, for that matter. But it was embarrassing to realize, you know what, this is a status thing for me that I'm not acknowledging, and I need to acknowledge that. Mm-hmm. I need to accept the fact that there's a pride element to that I need to give up. And that was really freeing, actually, to finally come to that realization and fully say, you know what, it really is not who I am. I'm outside that. I'm a person outside of what I do. Mm-hmm. And that was really liberating to be able to say that.
So let me get this straight. After this announcement and knowing that you and I share a love of sports, does that mean starting January 1st, we have to call you Coach?
Coach Russ?
Yeah, Coach Russ.
Well,
Will you have a whistle on a string around your neck?
Well, I've always said that I prefer to be called Admiral.
Oh.
If I had any title at all. No, I don't.
Well,
just Russ, I think.
Okay.
Yeah. One thing I would encourage you to pay attention to is the grief. This idea that anytime there's loss, there's grief, and the greater the loss, the greater the grief. Mm-hmm. And even if we're making the choice, even if we're choosing something and we're moving towards something that is really good, you are also leaving something that has been significant and meaningful and redemptive and healing for all of those patients and all of those experiences. And so just giving yourself permission to acknowledge that loss and that grief, I think will be huge. And that many times is a piece that we miss, especially if we made the choice and we're moving towards something that we perceive as good. We're kind of surprised that there would be grief.
I agree with
and
that.
yet there will be.
Yeah.
That's happened since the letter went out, and so every patient I see now is, I'm saying goodbye to. Mm-hmm. And that's been both heartwarming. I had a 16-year-old the other day that just looked me right in the eyes and said, "I'm really going to miss you." And I thought that was really sweet.
And 16-year-olds don't typically miss adults.
Very 16-year-old
I was surprised by that, but so it's bittersweet that way. And Susie's mentioned multiple times, I'm going to miss, the silly and funny things, kids say all the time, and that's something I think I've taken for granted a little bit over the years that I've been able to interact with so many wonderful kids. And I don't know. Well, I agree with the grieving part, but that by far outweighed by the excitement.
Well, it is very exciting for us, for the two of you to be here, to be available, to be full-time. What it's going to mean to more men that we can work with, more couples that we can partner with and work with. So it's very exciting for us. And it is meaningful to be able to say that there is this calling part of it, that there is this invitation from God that this is the place for you to be. And God's activity, God's purpose, God's meaning is all found in that calling.
It's also very meaningful as we're working with clients to be able to reference that you two have a healing journey as part of your story. So as you have shared with us on these 2 podcasts what that transition has been like, we're blessed at Faithful and True that we've got team members like the Smiths and the Hardesties and you and Beth, where they have their healing journey story, which makes you so relatable to the people that you help. We get, I guess it doesn't get broadcast very often, but we get tons of really compliments and affirmations from the people who are working with you. So you're making a big difference in helping those people. And we thank you for joining us on the podcast. This has been a lot of fun to kind of explore the behind-the-scenes look of what that was like for you guys as a couple and as recovering individuals, and kind of elevating yourself to a new profession, new line of work. And we're glad that it's with us here at Faithful and True. So
Thanks. Thank you.
We'd like to thank all of you for watching and listening today to the Faithful and True podcast. Greg, did you have any? You almost always have a pearl of wisdom to leave us with.
Well, I would say the invitation for all of us is to continue to listen to what it is that God is doing.
Yeah.
And I often pray for men that they will hear clearly whatever the next right step is for them, and that they will have the courage and the capacity to choose it.
Yeah.
We appreciate that. I knew it would be a pearl of wisdom. I could feel it coming. Once again, thank you very much. We look forward to seeing you again soon. We hope that if you're a man out there struggling, we invite you to go to faithfulandtrue.com. Take a look at the men's workshop coming up. We've got some big announcements coming up for January, and Russ is not the only one with a great big announcement. In January, we're going to be launching a brand new brand of Faithful and True. We're excited about a new website, a new logo, all of that good stuff. So we're going to be talking more about that in upcoming podcasts. In the meantime, we hope that this coming week is going to be a week for you that's filled with great blessings and great vision.